This is the review of the answers to test number one. Problem number one. Solve for x. Okay, so my first step would be to rewrite the problem. And then to check whether I have the right numbers. Some people did not have the right numbers on the actual exam. So a few students, lost points because they had a different problem, not just this one, but a number of problems. As they were transcribing it from the paper or from the phone to the paper that they were writing on, there were numbers that were misplaced. So you got to be very, very careful about that. Now, the least common multiple among 3, 4, and 8, the 3 obviously is the same as that, is going to be 24. You're going to multiply everything by 24. And 3 into 24 is 8. 8 times 2x is 16x. Plus 4 into 24 is 6. 6 times 3 is 18. 8 into 24 is 3. 3 times 7x is 21x. Minus 3 into 24 is 8. 8 times 1 is 8. I then brought the 21 to the left side of the equation. And I get negative 5x plus 18 equals negative 8. I then bring over negative 18. Negative 5x is equal to negative 26. Divide by negative 5. And x is equal to, many students in the class left the answer like that, which I accepted for full credit. Some students went further, which was to state that this is equal to 5 1/5, which was the best answer in my opinion, but and then some people had 5.2. So these are the 3 possible acceptable answers to that problem. Problem number 2. Solve for y. Eight times the absolute value of y minus 3 minus 16 equals 24. Okay, now there were a couple of students, not too many, who looked upon this as a distributive property type of situation, and they multiplied 8 times y and 8 times 3. That's, of course, totally incorrect. I'm going to rewrite this again. I try to do this as much as I can remember to do it, but the first step should have been this. And there were a number of students, not a lot, of course, but who, added incorrectly. And this comes out to 40. Then you should divide by 8. In other words, isolate the absolute value. This is the critical step right here. And from here, y minus 3 equals positive 5, and y minus 3 equals negative 5. Those were the 2 possibilities. And when you solve this, you get that y is equal to 8 as one answer, and y equals negative 2 as the other possible answer. And, if you wanted to, you could take the 8, put it back in here, and check it, or the negative 2 even. Let's do the negative 2. Negative 2, negative 3 is negative 5. The absolute value of negative 5 is 5. 8 times 5 is 40, and 40 minus 16 is 24. So if you just needed some verification of that fact, that's how you would do it. Okay, let's see if we could squeeze problem number 3 in here. I believe we probably can. And the problem states solve for z. It's -6 times 4z minus 7 less than or equal to 18. Graph the solution and also express the answer in interval notation. So that's very important, and that's another, these are various, places that people made mistakes. I keep, having graded the papers, it's advantageous to do a review of the answers after I've graded the papers, because that gives me a chance to see what people did wrong. This is a distributive property. Well, but first, let's do this. So -6 times 4z minus 7 less than or equal to 18. So this becomes -24z. Positive 54 is less than or equal to 18. And I'm just checking my work. -24z, positive 54. Oh, but here's an answer, here's a mistake. This is not a 9, right? So you pick up mistakes as you keep doing the problem, over and over. I would have picked up the mistake of putting a 9 there instead of a 7. But that's an example of constantly going back over your work over and over again. And certainly if you did not do as well as you would have wanted to on this test, or you made a mistake on this particular problem, that's something that you have to look for. You have to look for making a mistake, which of course would give you not 54 here, but 42. Okay, now I didn't edit that out of the video because I wanted you to see that when a mistake is made, you can find your own mistake very easily and then correct it. So -42, -42, -24z, this cancels out, is less than or equal to -24. And, here, you're, combining two sign numbers with different signs. So you subtract. And keep the sign of the larger number, 42 larger than 18, not the larger number, because the larger number is really positive 18. It's the larger number in absolute values. So 42 has a larger absolute value than 18, and that's what we use. We use the sign of the 42. So when I say larger number, I mean the larger number without the sign. And 42 is certainly larger than 18 without the sign. That's where the -24 comes from. Divide both sides of the equation, of the inequality, not the equation, not an equation. Divide by -24, you get z. Here, you get 1. And because you divided by a negative number, instead of the sign being what it is, you flip it around. And that's what it should look like. And therefore, here's the graph. So we're doing 1, so we could put, more effort into that. This is negative infinity. This is infinity. So that's a shaded in circle because there's a line underneath here. And we're going in this direction because it's greater than or equal to. That's the graphing. You were asked to graph the solution and also express in interval notation, which would be 1 and infinity. Many people did not make it clear between the bracket and the parentheses. This must be clear. You can't make a bracket and make it look like a parentheses. You have to make it very, very clear that this is a bracket. You know, you're communicating with the person grading your paper, and therefore you want to make it very distinctly clear the difference between parentheses and brackets. And these are the two answers right here. One, this is the answer expressed as a graph and expressed as interval notation. Okay, if you left the interval notation out, it was a wrong answer. If you left the graph out, you got, some points off. Yeah, what was it? An 8-point question. So you're gonna lose a point here and a point there. And you don't need to do that. If you got the problem right, just make the leap from the answer here to the graphing solution and the interval notation. And we go now to problem number 4. Again, you want to make sure you transcribe this perfectly correctly. So you see, I'm holding it right up to it and next to it because I don't want to make a mistake on this. Again, you're asked to graph the solution and also express in interval notation. Now, when you have an absolute value, so we're combining the concept of absolute value with the concept of inequality, and that's what number 4 is. And this becomes x plus 7 greater than or equal to 5. And if it's a greater than, it's an or x plus 7 less than or equal to -5. So once again, when you have a situation like this, you're going in two directions. You're going to this and to that. And now you solve each of these inequalities. -7, x is greater than or equal to -2, or x is less than or equal to -12. Now, I know that I told you that, well, let me just give the answer. And so, as a graph, this is what it looks like. So we're talking about negative numbers, so we don't need to, put the 0 in the middle. We could move it over because we're just doing negative numbers. So this is what it is. It's shaded in at -2, and it's greater than or equal to that, so it's going to go in this direction. And it's less than or equal to -12, and you're going to go in this direction. Now, in interval notation, now so remember, this is -infinity, and that's infinity. This is what it looks like. This is not -20. This is, this is -2. -2 to infinity. Greater than or equal to -2, less than or equal to -12. And this is what it should look like. I know people had it all mixed up. People had the one of them over here, the -12 to -infinity backwards, and they had this one over there and this one. This is what it should look like from now on. And I didn't like the way that looked. I know I said to the class, it didn't matter how you had it, but I've changed my mind, and this is really, I didn't take points off for that because I told you it was okay. But in a situation like this is what it's supposed to look like. With the, starting with the -infinity on the left, and then, the -12, and then, or -2 to infinity going off in that direction. That's what it should look like. This shouldn't be over here and that over there. They shouldn't be backwards. This is the way it's supposed to be. And actually, this is not the right answer. Because, again, again, looking at this many, many times, which is you're supposed to do, I found that this is what it's supposed to look like. Okay, because that's a line, a shaded in circle, therefore brackets. Again, a line underneath and brackets. And this is the answer to the question. Okay, problem number 5. You're given the endpoints of a diameter of a circle are 3, 6, and -9, -8. And you're asked to write the equation of the circle. Now, now you should begin this problem with the general form for the equation of a circle, and this would be it. All right, so the object in this problem is to find the center of the circle. And when you found that, to put it back into the original formula here, and this is the radius. And that, of course, would go into that part of the formula. But the first thing we need to do, and this is, I like to do this first, actually. I'd like to just get a picture. So I'm going to draw a graph. 3, 6 would be up here. 3, 6, and then -9, -8 would be way out over here, actually. And then -8 would be down here. So I'm not sure exactly yet where, if it goes through the origin or anything like that, and certainly where the midpoint is. That's the first thing we're going to need to do. But this is what the circle will look like. And somewhere in the middle is the midpoint, and that midpoint is the center of the circle. So the first thing we're going to do is find the x coordinate of the midpoint using the original 2 points, 3, 6, and -9, -8. Okay, so let's begin. And remember that this is the h part in the formula. So the formula here is the x coordinate of the midpoint. So that's what we're trying to find now. And that will be x1 plus x2 divided by 2, which will be 3 plus a -9. 3 plus -9 divided by 2 is -6 divided by 2. And the x coordinate of the midpoint is -3, which would be h. So we now know the x coordinate of the center of the circle. Then you would find the y coordinate of the midpoint, which is equal to k, and that would be y1 plus y2 over 2, which would be -8 plus 6 divided by 2, which is -2 divided by 2, or -1. So k is equal to -1. Let's see if we could first plot this. So -3 and -1, it's pretty close, pretty close. It's down here somewhere, and that's the midpoint of the diameter, which is also the center of the circle. So let me just put that here. That's -3, -1. And in the formula, it would be x minus -1 squared plus y. See, I caught myself. It's x minus -3 squared and y minus -1 squared. Okay, so this is the k. which led us to here. Okay, and that's the h, which led us to the -3. Now, you really, at this, what equals r squared, don't forget that. Now, you really should not leave it like that. A lot of students did, and I did not take points off. But you should make this x plus 3. It's a double negative. So make that a positive, and then make that, kind of makes it look nicer. I didn't take points off it, as I said, but that's the way it's supposed to look. Now we want to find the radius, which means the length of the radius. So the length of the radius will either be this length right here or this length right here. Okay, so you have to make a choice. You could either find the length of this line or the length of this line. Both of them are radii. The midpoint of the diameter causes, and being it's the center of the circle, there to be a radius here and a radius there. So it's your choice, but I think I chose, let me see what I chose. Yeah, I chose the positive value. I don't want all negative values here. So I chose 3, 6. X1, Y1 will be 3, 6. And X2, Y2 will be -3, -1. Okay, and now we use the distance formula, which is the square root of X2 minus X1 squared plus Y2 minus Y1 squared. And remember that even though I'm using the D, which may lead you to believe I'm finding the length of the diameter, I'm using D to designate the distance, but really we're finding the length of the radius. So the length of the radius, which is using the distance formula, will be X2, which is -3 minus 3 squared plus -1 minus 6, which is -1 minus 6 squared. And again, this is, a lot of signs and manipulations of numbers. So this is x to -3 minus 3, -1 minus 6. There it is right there. And be careful. Now you could have done, it didn't make a difference. You could have done x1 minus x2, y1 minus y2, and then you would have had 3 minus a -3. So, it depends if you have no trouble with sign numbers. But this is, to me, this would have been a wise choice, because you would have changed the sign there. It would have come out 6 squared, but this is going to be -6 squared. So once again, -6 squared plus -7 squared. By pre-calculus, you should know how to use sign numbers by now, right? And this would become, continuing on, this would be the square root of 36 plus 49. We didn't need such a long line. So this would be the square root of 85, and that's the length of the radius. Okay, so that's what we have, and we have a very little amount of space, but just enough to simply write the formula. Now, where were we? Here's where we were, right here. This goes down here, x plus 3 squared plus y plus 1 squared equals the square root of 85 squared. Now, some people had that. Some people had x plus 3 squared plus y plus 1 squared equals the square root of 85 squared is simply 85. I accepted either one of these two answers. But the better answer is, is to indicate that the square root of a number squared is equal to the number itself. And this was the answer to the question. And this was quite a question, 12 points. A lot of places to make a mistake. Look at, the work that I did here, a lot of places to make a mistake. Problem number 6. Problem number 6. What is the equation of the line in slope-intercept form, which immediately should ring a bell and put you going in this direction, which passes through the points? So the line will, is a line which goes through these 2 points. It goes through other points, of course, but these are 2 of the points that goes through. Okay, so you want to find you want to fill in basically the y and the x stay. The m and the b change. The m is the slope, the b is the y-intercept. So the first thing I'm going to do is find m, which is the slope. And the formula is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. That is the change in y divided by the change in x. Okay, so this is what we're substituting into this formula right here. And that's going to be equal to, so let's do this. Y2 minus y1, so negative 3 minus 7 over 1 minus negative 3. Again, I cannot tell you how many mistakes there were in simply setting this up and evaluating this. A lot of mistakes on this problem. Sign numbers. Negative 10 divided by, this signs change, it's over 4, which equals negative 5. Negative 5, over 2. And so what I did here was I reduced the fraction by dividing by 2. 2 into 10 is 5, 2 into 4 is 2, keep the negative. So this is what the slope is. So the first step in this problem is to indicate that it's y equals negative 5 over 2x plus b. And now we need to find out what b is equal to. So we take either one of these 2 points, doesn't make a difference. So I'm going to take this one. And it's going to be 7 is equal to negative 2 times x, which is negative 3 plus b. Now this becomes 7 equals positive 15 over 2, because the 2 negatives make that positive, which equals 7. Well, before I do that, which equals 2 into 15 is 7.5. So b is equal to so here it is. So this was, so this is 7 is equal to 7.5 plus b. Bring over the 7.5. And b is equal to -0.5. And this goes back into this equation. So y equals -5 over 2 times x minus 1/2. This was the complete answer. Okay, so problem number 7. Find the difference quotient. Now simplify your answer. So you're given that f of x is equal to x squared minus 3x plus 2. Now here is the difference quotient, f of -3 plus h minus f of -3 divided by h, where h is not, of course, equal to 0, because you can't have a 0 in the denominator. So the first thing you want to do is evaluate this. So instead of f of x, you're going to have f of -3 plus h, which equals -3 plus h squared. -3 times -3 plus h plus 2. And this would give us, now, this needs to be evaluated. When you do that, you're going to get +9, -6h plus h squared. And if you need to verify that for yourself, you could just multiply -3 plus h times -3 plus h. And that would give you not -9. A lot of people have -9. It's +9 because it's -3 times -3. Okay, so you're getting that there. And then here, you're getting 9 -3h plus 2. Then you want to simplify this. 9 and 9 is, well, let's put everything in order. So this would go first. Then this would go next. And then 9 and 2 is +20. So that is f of -3 plus h. Very, very important, obviously, because you're going to replace this up here with h squared minus 9h plus 20. Then you want to do f of -3, which would be the original function, but with -3 substituted in here. And that would give you +9, +9, +2. As I told you, when this part of the problem is the same as this part of the problem, that's a good sign. Because these numbers, this number should be the same as that number on the end. Okay, so therefore, this can be replaced by h squared So this can be replaced by, down here, h squared minus 9h plus 20. Then there's a minus sign in the middle there. And then there's a 20 divided by h. This cancels out because 20 minus 20 is 0. You get h squared minus 9h divided by h, which is h squared over h minus 9h over h. H squared divided by h to the first is h, and the h's cancel out, and this was the answer to the question. This is also a 12-point question. A lot of places to make a mistake, obviously. And again, the best thing you could do in this problem is to go back and just do it all over again. But a lot of things would, are helping you. Like I said, that the fact that this 20 would line up with that 20 perfectly. You could see what was supposed to happen here. The 20s are supposed to cancel out, and you wind up here, and that would be the answer. Okay, problem number 8. Solve for x and y. 3x minus 5y equals 13, and negative 2x minus 3y is equal to 4. Okay, now let me rewrite this problem. So 3x minus 5y equals 13. Negative 2x, negative 3y equals 4. And when you're going to multiply, I'm going to get rid of the x's. Because if you get rid of the y's, you're going to have to multiply by a sign, because you have the same sign here. So So I'm gonna just choose the x's. And this would be a 3 and this would be a 2. This would be 6x minus 10y equals 26. Negative 6x, negative 9y equals 12. When you add the two equations, the 6's drop out. This becomes negative 19y equals 38. Divide by negative 19. And y is equal to negative 2. That's good. You know, you don't get a fraction. Everything is working pretty well. Your next step is to take that negative 2, go back to one of the two equations. I'm choosing this one, 3x minus 5y equals 13. Substitute y equals negative 2. And work it out. 3x plus 10 equals 13. Minus 10, minus 10. 3x equals 3. And x is equal to 1. So in other words, the answer to the question is x is 1, y is negative 2. It's the best way of writing the answer to that problem. As an ordered pair. Problem number 9. Okay, so for the following, name the graph. Name and graph the parent function. Sketch the graph of g of x, and you're given this as g of x. G of x is equal to negative the absolute value of x minus 3 minus 2. Okay, so the first part is to name the parent function. Name and graph. So this is what I wanted for this problem. I wanted you to state that the parent, this is the perfect answer, the parent function, which let's say f of x equals the absolute value of x, and the parent looks like that. Many people put the negative in front of the parent function, causing the graph, the reflection of this graph. So some people had as the parent function this, but the reflection of it, which is not, you know, that's not it. The parent function is the simplest variety. This is what I wanted. Some people gave me the graph without naming it. Lost a point for that. Some people gave me the graph, but I get to follow directions. The directions said name and graph. Name and graph the parent function. And then the second part of it is graph the actual function, where h is 3. Remember that h is the opposite of negative 3. And k is negative 2. And, you know, the a is negative 1, which means it's going to be the reflection. And graphing, if h is 3, that's the x. That's going to be here. The k is negative 2, that's down here. And we don't want it to look like this. We want it to look with the negative 1 as the reflection. So it's going to go down like this. This is a complete answer to the question. And this is g of x equals negative the absolute value of x minus 3 minus 2. Problem number 10. Answer each question below. Question A. Find f of negative 3 if f of x is equal to negative 5x squared, positive 7x, negative 5. Okay, so all you need to do in this problem is to find f of negative 3, which means wherever you see an x, you substitute a negative 3 equals negative 5 times 9, negative 3 to the second power is positive 9. And this would be just, rewrite everything. Take your time. Just rewrite everything. Negative 45, negative 21, negative 5. So you want to add these three numbers. Basically, you're just adding 25, 21, and 5. And that comes out to 71, negative 71, because they're all negatives. So f of negative 3 is negative 70. Question number 2. So I ask you to state in interval notation. State in interval notation the domain for each of the following, starting with problem I. This was an I, which is f of x equals negative 2x plus 5. For a linear equation of this type, it's going to be all real numbers. Very few people use that. Most people just did this, which was correct. That's question I. Question double I would be f of x is equal to the square root of x minus 3. Now, the only thing we have to worry about with domain is that this underneath the radical sign has to be greater than or equal to 0. So this is what it is. This is the domain. Whatever this comes out to be, that's the answer to the question. And I add 3 to both sides. X is greater than or equal to 3. Okay, so if you want to graph it, you're welcome to do so. Here's 0, here's 3. Greater than or equal to 3. Out to infinity. 3 to infinity. And that's the domain. And then problem triple I would be f of x equals 3x over 7 minus x. So the situation with fractions is that the denominator has to be not equal to 0. That's the only thing. It could be positive, negative, whatever. 7 minus x cannot equal 0. If we can fulfill that requirement, that will be the domain. So I solve the equation. Negative x not equal. So that doesn't really say much to us, but when you multiply it by -1, x cannot equal 7. So it's everything apparently, except when x is equal to 7. In other words, on the number line, negative infinity to infinity, and here's 0, here's 7. So that's the only thing. It's the whole number line, but you leave out the 7. So it's everything in this direction and everything in the other direction. And that's an open circle. So in other words, it's negative infinity to 7 parentheses, because it's an open circle, or 7 to infinity. And that would be the domain for that final problem. And that was the test you took.